Ahoy! Hashtag Zach here. Today, we're going to compare and contrast the economies of classical Greece and ancient Rome. Both Greece and Rome were around between 500 BC and AD 500, and they were both in the same Mediterranean basin. They had the same resources and populations at their disposal. The trade networks of Greece were based off of the import of grain and luxury goods, and the export of commodities like olive oil and religious artifacts. Trade was conducted through a barter system that took place in many Greek cities around peninsulas and islands. The Greeks also had a lot of economic policies to ensure economic health. For example, they banned the export of grain in order to ensure that all their people would have enough food. They also fixed interest rates for shipping so that investors wouldn't have to have a lot of liability if the ships sank. A lot of times, traders would use their ships as collateral when taking out loans for stuff to buy and sell. This system of international trade with some government regulation is very similar to what the United States has today. It has fleets of transport ships that travel across the world from places as far-flung as China, the Middle East, and Europe to conduct the trade of many different luxury goods. And the United States, like Greece, does not export very much foodstuffs, but rather other products. This produced a society in Greece where almost the entire population was in one of three disciplines, either the farming of grain, the production of olive oil, or trade in a seaport. Rome was very different. Its entire economy was a system based off of conquest and enslavement. At its height, Rome had a third of the world's population under its control, and over half were slaves. The slaves were used to extract the resources of their native lands and ship them back to Rome to fund further expansion. These resources could be anything from precious metals to iron to the ingredients for bronze making to olive oil from Greece to luxury goods from Africa or the Middle East. It would be almost impossible to overstate the significance of the slave trade in the Roman economy. The entire system was built on it because the free labor was the only way for a system built on expansion to survive. The Romans were very non-discriminatory when it came to acquiring slaves. They would enslave anyone from a Spaniard to an African to an Arab from the Middle East. Although most of their slaves came from Eastern Europe, an ethnicity called a Slav, where actually the Slavs made up so many slaves that is the origin of the word slave. The vast majority of slaves were put to work either some sort of manual labor, such as mining or construction, or as household servants for the wealthy. The Roman system of imperialism is almost identical to the system the British employed when conquering their empire across the world. Now, trade and labor are only two forces in an economy. We have not considered many of the other very important forces that are at play in economics. One factor to consider is what commodities were traded. In Greece, it was mostly luxury items like olive oil or wine. This is where Greece really resembles the British Empire, as like the Greeks, the British spent a lot of resources acquiring luxury goods. For the British, the desirable objects were things like porcelain, silk, or tea. In Rome, a large portion of the trade was centered on household products that people could use that were produced by Rome's industrial metalworks. In this, the Roman economy really resembles the modern American economy, because the modern American economy relies heavily on imported plastic goods made in China and used in households all over the country. Another factor we can compare is currency. On Greek currency, typically items from mythology or deities would be depicted on coins. In contrast, Rome would typically display famous emperors on their coins. This difference suggests a lot about the cultural focus of these two groups of people. The Greeks had a lot of focus on the supernatural and superstitious side of human culture, as they put a lot of focus into worshiping and idolizing their deities. Meanwhile, the Romans had a much more materialistic view of the world, as a lot of their time and attention went into pursuing power, the gladiator games, the chariot races, and other forms of entertainment in the Colosseum. The last major distinction I will make between Greece and Rome of the classical era is how they paid for their militaries. The Greeks used a militia army funded not by the government but by volunteers. This matches what the United States did for most of its history, with its army from the Revolutionary War through World War I being a volunteer force that was kept at very low numbers during peacetime. And as for the Romans, well, their legionaries were the most professional fighting force on earth up until the knights of Europe and the samurai of Japan in the Middle Ages. The British followed this model and constantly had a massive standing military to maintain its colonies would remain under British control. I hope you learned something new about the Greek and Roman economies, and that you also learned something about the British and the Americans as well, because as they say, history may never repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Please comment, like, and subscribe, and come back for future videos.